morning or afternoon, everybody. We are about to start this webinar. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who have just joined, we are giving it one more minute and then we will start the presentation. Thank you. Okay, let's get this thing rolling. Thank you, everybody, for spending some time with us today and joining us for our webinar. Hopefully today we can help accelerate your digital transformation on your journey to QA automation. Today we have myself, Nick Craig. I'm a sales executive, bold enthusiast. I got 9 years of customer-focused account management under my belt, and I love technology and learning how to apply it in everyday life. And we are lucky to have Zohaib Farhan with us today. He is our practice lead for QA. He has over 10 years of experience in manual and automation testing with expertise in fintech applications, team development, and professional training. And he's going to be taking us through most of this slide deck as well as some demos. So we got a treat for you guys. And just to go over what we will be going over today, first we're going to introduce everybody to automation testing. Then we're going to show you how to create an automation framework, then build extension methods to cope with the challenges of automation, then show you how to involve data-driven testing effectively. We'll create interactive test cases. We will generate smart reports and then take you through a couple demos. Before I hand it over to Zohaib, just so everybody knows, I will be monitoring the chat for any questions, and we will stop and answer those at any point or for a couple points throughout the presentation. So feel free to ask away. And if we can't get into any of those questions during the presentation, we will follow up with you after the presentation. So I will hand it over to Zohaib.
Hi guys, I'm Zohaib and I will be walking you through the webinar today. So first of all, let's talk about the 4 W's of automation testing. The 4 W's are: what is automation testing, when to perform automation testing, why to perform automation testing, and which test scenario is to automate. So let's cover that in detail. The first is, what is automation testing? Basically, that is the testing method using different tools to minimize the human intervention and become more efficient and accurate. Next is, when to perform automation testing. When we have the large and critical projects, the application is stable and enough to bear the load of automation testing. And that has nothing to do with the time-bound sort of thing. We have to test the frequent regression test suite, and the manual work are too high. In covering that, when not to perform the automation testing is that when the application is not even tested manually once to validate the flow and risk areas. Similarly, if there is no need of regression, then there is no need in building up automation tests and spend the time to automate the flow. Why to perform automation testing? So basically, whenever the manual testing of all the workflows, all fields, and the negative scenarios is time and money consuming. Clients are learning and launching their products globally. So it is very difficult to test for multilingual sites manually. We have automation test does not require human intervention. You can run automated tests unattended and overnight. It increases the speed of the test execution, and also it helps increasing the test coverage because you will have enough time. Last thing is, manual testing can become boring and hence error prone for the manual testers. Last thing is which test scenario to automate. The test scenarios which are of high risk and business critical test cases, those needs to be automated so that human can minimum intervene in those scenarios. Test cases that are repeatedly executed, test cases that are very tedious and difficult to perform manually, and also those are time consuming. So those test cases or test scenarios we need to automate to get the things done for us. Similarly, when not to perform the automation testing on the test cases which are newly designed and not executed manually at least once, because the application would be unstable at that time. If the requirements are frequently changing, then we should not go for the automation testing at all. Now I have a very interesting case study for you. Basically, we had a client for which the regression test suite was of the 13 test cases. We calculated the average time to perform the single test case manually, and that was around the 3 minutes. So there were 13 test cases. So actually we spent around 40 minutes for all the test cases to be verified. The client has multiple environments, which were 40 odd environments, and our total effort was spent on the 26 hours. We automated those test cases and the results were astonishing. Like the single test case took around 27 seconds to execute. All the 13 test cases on single environment turns out to be in the 6 minutes. And to verify the 40 environments, the total time spent by the automation testing was the 4 hours. So the manual testing is approximately 6.5 times the automation testing efforts. This is the reason why we feel that automation testing is the important part of digital transformation. And we cannot achieve that until our test cases are not fully automated end to end. However, having said this, automation testing is not for all the scenarios. I will be covering the detail in the webinar, and then at the end, I will be showcasing 2 demonstrations that how automation testing helps achieving the higher customer satisfaction. Now let's talk about the common industry challenges. Basically, clients are launching their products globally and they want the faster feedback and less time to market so that they can gauge the response of their potential clients. They want to reduce the business expenses. Next, testing efficiency improvement and regression testing. As you know that continuous integration and continuous development is in place, so they want to cater that as well. They want their product to be stable. That's why they want higher test coverage. Reusability means that they have developed some testing standards and they want to use that over different applications that they are developing. They have to maintain the traceability from the requirement phase of the application to the deployment phase of the application, and the environments are quickly scaling. Last but not least, nowadays they have bulk data verification and manipulation. For that purpose, the human intervention becomes more critical because this is error prone and there might be chances that they can make mistakes. But once the machine is trained in a way that automation framework is developed, then that bulk data verification is of no pain. So what is automation framework? Basically, framework can be defined as the set of guidelines which when followed produce beneficial results. It is the coding standards that required less maintenance of code. Once the framework is developed, you can use that anywhere within the limits of the development. And then maintaining the consistency in overall testing is very important. Framework will be designed in a way that it will be consistent over all the application. That improves the test structure, maximize code reusage. Once you have written functions and method for the particular actions, then you can use that anywhere in the application where those functions are used. They have higher portability. Once the framework is fully developed and matured over the time, then you can port that anywhere within the limits of the application. So let's talk about the framework used in automation testing. The first framework that is used is keyword-driven framework. Keyword-driven framework is basically the scripting technique that uses data files to contain the keywords related to the application being tested. These keywords describe the set of actions that is required to perform a specific step. For example, you talk about the login to the application, then you can use the keyword of login. Wherever your framework will encounter that keyword, it would log in the application. Similarly, emails, that keyword could be trained in a way that whenever the framework reads that emails keyword, it will redirect the application to the email section. Similarly, if you have the keyword of send email, that would mean for the automation framework to generate email from the application. And last but not least, like if you use the example of logout keyword, then the user will log out from the application. Next one is data-driven framework. Basically, all of our test data is generated from some external files like Excel, CSV, XML, and you can use those files within your framework. That is where the data-driven framework comes into the business. Next is modular framework. This is the approach where all the test cases are first analyzed to find out the reusable flows. Then while scripting, all these reusable flows are created as functions. Smaller scripts are stored in external files and called in the test scripts wherever those are required. Last type of the framework is the hybrid framework. Basically, that is mixture of all the above frameworks wherever those are required. For example, if I want to develop a framework for like keyword driven and data driven approach to be combined, then I will be calling it a hybrid framework, where one of my external data source will be containing the keywords and the other data source will be containing the test data that I will be using for my test cases. So now we have known the types of the automation framework. Now how to create an automation framework more efficiently? We have to consider the following things while creating the automation framework. The first thing is common practices. We have to use the best common practices. That is, do not rely only on UI test automation. This means that every application on different screen has different aspect ratio. So we cannot thoroughly rely on the UI test automation. While we have to use the less thread dot sleep sort of things in our coding, because that leaves the application to be halted for specific amount of time. We should not be running all the tests across all the target browsers because we have bandwidth limitation and there are chances that it will give the false results. We should name our tests wisely. We should take the screenshots so that we can use them as reporting purposes. The tests should be independent from each other. And the detailed reporting at the end should be present. Second thing is assumption. This is very critical point in the planning phase. For example, I am assuming that I am going to buy a licensed tool or not. I am assuming that I am going to build a hybrid framework or a data-driven framework. And once those assumptions are made, we tend to choose the tool from the available shortlisted pool. We should use the libraries. Library is also a collection of implementation of behavior written in terms of language that has a well-defined interface for which the behavior is invoked. So rather than writing the codes again and again, we should use the pre-written code in the form of libraries. We have to follow the coding standards like the consistent indentations, following the dry principle, which is do not repeat yourself. We have to limit the line lengths. File and folder structure in our framework should be well defined. We should use the naming conventions and we should keep the code simple so that it is understandable to the other team members. Now the next thing is how to build the test cases efficiently for automation testing. For that purpose, whenever we are building the automation framework and all decisions are made according to that, we have to build the page object models. For example, there are different pages in the application like login page, main page, we have to build the separate classes for each page. And then if there are certain methods that are belonging to that specific page, for example, opening the particular record belongs to the main page, then we should write those methods within the class files of those pages. We should be writing the helping and extension methods. I will be talking in detail about those in our upcoming slides. We have to prepare the relevant test data so that our framework can utilize that, our test cases can utilize that and execute and then generate the results. And last but not least, we have to utilize the design documents which were developed at the start phase of the project. Test automation test cases are easily understandable, consistent throughout the application. True representative of manual test steps. That means the test steps which are written in the test design document, the test cases should be in that form that whoever team member reads those automation test cases can relate to the manual test design document. It has to generate the actual results, not the false positives or false negatives, because we have to entertain the exceptions in that very well. It should isolate the fail and pass steps with the exhibits. This is very important. Whenever we don't have any exhibit, it would be very difficult to relate the pass or fail step to the particular scenario. Any questions, Nick, till now?
Yeah, actually we do. First question is, what is the best practice and which tests should be automated? Regression smoke or sanity?
Basically, we can automate the regression test suite whenever there is the requirement of continuous deployment. Then we have to validate the health of the application. That's where the regression testing automation comes into the part. We do not have to manually verify each and everything. And then somehow we can automate the smoke test as well, because smoke tests are not exhaustive testing. And whenever the application is deployed on the new environment, there are certain checks we need to verify. We can automate the smoke test in that way. And sanity test can check the application not in detail, but somehow to check that each and every area of the application is working perfectly. So it totally depends on the decisions which we are taking during the product development or application development.
Gotcha. And we do have one more question, and it's can we use the same test case document for preparing automation test cases?
Basically, for the manual test cases, those are pretty much exhaustive documents. Like they are covering all the negative scenarios, they are covering all the field validations and all that. We can use that document as the base document for our automation test design document. That would not be covering the sample data for each and every field, length of the data for that particular field. Either that would be validating the negative flow or the positive flow. So yes, the automation test case document is little different from the manual test case document, but that manual test case document we can use as a base for the automation test case document.
Thank you, and that was it.
All right. So moving forward, let's talk about what is data-driven testing and how it can benefit us. As I already told that this is the test design and execution strategy that in which we read the test data from external data source. The benefit of that data-driven testing that it allows to test the application with multiple set of data values during regression testing. Test data and verification data can be organized in just one file, and it is separate from the test case logic. So actions and functions can be reused in different tests. The same test cases can be executed several times, which help to reduce test case and scripts. Any changes in the test script do not affect the test data. So basically, this is the interpretation of the data driven, that it reads the data file that help us in getting the data driven scripts, and then it produces the actual results, and we can compare those results with the expected results. So the Selenium WebDriver data driven framework is actually the framework that takes the input from the external data source, and the framework includes the navigation through a program, reading the data files, and logging the test results. We can also log the test results in the output files like CSV or Excel files. So the Selenium WebDriver data-driven framework, it should have the following features. It has the less time to test large data sets. You should design and implement your test cases in a way that it should efficiently use the data sets which we prepared within our programs, like the list or the dictionaries, which saves the data from the external data source to be utilized in our programs or test cases which are automated. It should be easier, rapid, and efficient analysis that should provide. This is the characteristic like easy debugging that should relate to all the frameworks which we talked about. Secondly, that should have a well-defined architectural design. That means the browser-related settings, the data layers, and other things are separated from each other and not interdependent. That should be robust, stable, and reliable. The scripts should be easy to maintain. Script execution in multiple test environment should be very well managed, because in that way we can use the same test data that we have prepared and saved in our external data sources. Now, talking about all the automation framework and automation test cases, we talked about the helping methods or extension methods. As part of WebDrivers, testers need to write specific methods which are not available as part of WebDriver. Let's talk about the examples. Like wait until clickable, the element should be clickable and we should wait until then. Click when available, expand all tabs within the application page, page collapse, or get switch iframe. In the CRM applications, there are multiple iframes and we cannot identify the element until and unless we are on the correct iframe. Similarly, element is present or not, that could be a Boolean function. And similarly, when there are multiple alerts on the web page, then we have to handle that generically, and we can write the extension method or the helping method for that. If the application is considered of the multiple windows, then we have to write one generic method to handle all those functions. Similarly, there is a click and send keys. Sometimes the Selenium built-in click function doesn't work. We have to design our click in a way that it uses the JavaScript executor class to generate that click. And similarly, the send keys, because sometimes that problem occurs in the date fields where we input the date character by character and it skips some characters. So we can override the send keys function as well. Any questions till now?
Yeah, we actually had a question come in. Is it possible to build automation framework without extension methods?
I don't think that would be a correct practice, because there are some applications which require all these things which I talked about that. And one important thing is that the extension methods should be static, belonging to the static class, so that we can call them quite easily. And we have to write the send keys or click functionality, because that would make our framework more concrete and accurate.
All right, thank you.
All right. So even the most thorough Selenium testing scripts or the test automation scripts will prove insufficient without helpful reporting to match. Reporting is the most critical part that track, trace, and communicate the information. Without reporting, all the hard work that you put into writing and executing those test cases will be lost, because there would be no method to monitor the execution. So for that purpose, we are initially talking about two kinds of reports. One is Excel reporting and second one is extent reporting. Excel reporting is basically the conventional reporting method that can be generated for the automation framework. Each step is in separate column having screenshot of that step. that can be easily shareable through different mediums to the particular stakeholders. It is very simple and easy to understand. Similarly, we can use the built-in functionalities for Excel, as we can log as many steps as possible with the tester name, with the complexity of that step, with the pass fail criteria, and whether that test case is pass or fail. And similarly, we can utilize the built-in functions of the Excel to manipulate any calculations which are involved within the test case. The next type is extend report. Basically, that is the customizable HTML report with stepwise and pie chart representation. It displays the time taken for the test case execution within the report. Each test step can be associated with a screenshot, and we can maintain or monitor that screenshot to gauge that whether our test step was actually pass or actually fail. And we can also measure the reason for the test case step to be passed or failed. Multiple test runs within a single suite can be tracked easily in that. So a report, talking about the characteristics of the report, a report should be short and concise. It should reveal the total number of successes as well as the failures. It should capture all the footprints that could lead to the root cause of the failure. Also, the report should provide the review of the historical data for test cases and failures. We should also be able to gauge the age of the defect. It should support a format that we can share easily through our mediums to the particular stakeholders. It should provide the test coverage of the module under test and also the test coverage of the application under test. Now, having talked about lot about automation testing, now let's see that automation testing replaces the manual testing. Basically, automation testing comes as a relief for validation during various phases of software project. This improves communication among the coders, designers, and product owners. And also it allows potential glitches to be immediately rectified. Secondly, owing to the quick implementation of automated testing, plenty of time is saved, even for the enormous systems. This allows the testing to be carried out repeatedly, delivering faster results each time with lesser effort and time. As the testing takes up a significant portion of overall application development lifecycle, it goes to show that even the slightest improvement in overall efficiency can make an enormous difference to overall time frame of the project. Due to repetitive nature of the test automation test cases, in addition to the relative easy configuration of their setup, software developers have the opportunity to assess the program reactions. Testers tend to have different testing approaches, and their focus areas could vary due to their exposure and expertise. With the inclusion of automation, there is a guaranteed focus on all areas of testing, thereby assuming best possible quality. It provides the faster time to market because it greatly helps to reduce the time to market of an application by allowing consistent and constant execution of the test cases. Once automated, the test library execution is faster and runs longer than manual testing. As we talked earlier about our two demonstrations, so we are going to cover over here. And our first demo is related to the trip planning company. Let's cover to the overview of that. Basically, that company provides software solution for travel agents who then work with travelers and customers trying to book their trips to different locations. Such the tourist destination can be Europe or any other part of the world. So the core functions of the application are booking the trip, creating the departures, generating invoices, getting the services of different vendors like hotel, food, or all those things. It has more than 50 instances, that application, and the release schedule is for every quarter in the year. In this demo, we are recording all the use cases that we need to be automated. We are using the Selenium framework that alongside recording, there is a bunch of code written for navigations and different browsers, and also different scenarios. And for verification steps, we have to verify that there are multiple wizards, there are numerous iframes, there are few entities and grids. We have to verify the calculations on the invoices and bills, and also we have to validate that correct emails are generated from the system. Now let's have the video demonstration over here. Basically, this is the app config file of our framework in which we have mentioned the user credentials as well as the sheet from which it has to pick the environments. Here is the sheet that contains the list of the environments, and after completing the regression test suite on one of the environment, it would move to the next. Now we are executing the test cases. So here it is logging the application. Similarly, it would move to the different screens and different entities of the application. It would validate some of the wizards over here. There are some fields which are also validated through that, which are displayed or not. Here it is moving towards one of the entity that is cost, and then it is moving to the departure as I talked about earlier, the entities of the application. It is checking different iframes and similarly the different wizards. This is validating the iframe and then again the wizard pertaining to that entity. So these all test cases are recorded and we can like play them over the different environments and over again. We can validate the list of the test cases and generate the report as well from that. I'm going to stop this for the moment and let's talk about the report now, which is very important part. So here is the report. This is the extent report, which is generated out of the automation framework. You can see that here are different test cases which are having the pass and fail result. These are different test steps, and also it contains the screenshots of each and every test step from where you can validate that whether it was false positive or false negative. It has the pie chart which tells us that there are 10 test cases which are passed and there was not a single test case which is failed. Similarly, it has segregation for the test steps as well. This is the status available from where we can sort the test cases by their status. Like the past test cases would be listed as in this report, all test cases are passed. We can apply the filter of the failed test cases. We can apply the filter of the failed test steps, and then this moves on. This is basically the dashboard sort of thing in which it tells us that there were total number of 10 test cases and 41 test steps. It started at this time and it ended at this time. So it can tell us that time taken for all 10 test cases was 9 minutes and 23 seconds. Similarly, for each test case, there is a start time and end time as well as the time taken by that test case to be validated. So there are many use cases, and this is one of that use case for one application. But the takeaway is that if we have such application or such use cases, or even different applications having the somehow related use cases, we can write the automation scripts for those as well as, and then you can execute and generate reports quite easily. Now, coming back to our presentation, So let's talk about the takeaways from the demo one. We will be relating that to our 4Ws, which we talked about the automation testing earlier. So what? We use the Selenium WebDriver for automating this application. When the application was stable enough, we required the frequent regression test, and manual verification for that was too high. The testing all the scenarios and workflows were too much time taking, and automation testing provided us more efficiency. And also the manual testing, as I talked about with the human intervention, it was error prone, as we have to verify the bills, invoices, the related calculations, and the complex flows. So which test cases or test scenarios were automated? We analyzed that application and we checked for the repeating execution, the scenarios which were complex and were very time consuming for manual verification. So benefits after the implementation of automation testing over here, it reduced the human intervention. We can of course monitor the results and reports to judge that particular scenario was passed or failed. Similarly, the reports are very well formatted. And one important point here is to note that before automating, it was taking around 25 to 35 minutes for verifying these test cases on a single environment, while report preparation time wasn't included in that. And after automating this, now it takes around 4 to 6 minutes to verify the test cases alongside the well-formatted report, which with each and every step as pass or fail as I have shown. Now moving towards our second demo, the second scenario that I am choosing is security related scenario. The reason why I'm choosing this is that the security and roles for user of the application has to be tested with every change that is deployed. As every application has different security roles for their users, and by the time more and more features and users are added into the application, the roles keep on changing. So it is very important that with every release, this is verified that the users with specific roles can do certain things for which they are destined. That's why I chose this scenario, and we can relate this to any application which we test. This is very common use case. For example, if I talk about there is a salesperson who has access to the particular area of the application. Through the analysis and experience, it is observed that whenever there would be the certain problem accessing the area for that salesperson or any application portion within the application that is allowed for the salesperson, and someone in the organization is trying to fix that, the easiest way to fix that is by giving an elevated privileges. So this would either solve the problem for that salesperson or sales role, but it would disturb overall security of the application. So in order to summarize that, I can say that this is very common and sensitive security case, and we do not want the security breach at all. So here is the sheet that is very important that we prepared as part of this implementation setup. You can see that I have a supervisor role. Supervisor role should have read, create, and update rights, but does not have the delete right, because we have pointed out in the sheet that this is the false for supervisor role. And similarly, with care advocate and related person, which are other entities and objects. So in order to run these, we need to validate that whether those users can perform read, create, or update operations, or some of them can delete it too. So if someone can delete it, then it should be a failing scenario. Similarly, you can see that there is the business unit field. So that particular user or record should belong to the particular business unit. So if it doesn't belong to that business unit, that could also be the failing scenario. I'm going to play it. This is well explained. We have each and every entity that is listed. We have the operations defined for that, whether that role can read on the particular entity or not. So I have run that test case and it is now signing into the application with the user one defined in that list. And one important point, we can define as many users as possible in the sheet, and it would validate all the operations belonging to that user within one go. And then that user will be logged out of the application, and then the new user will log in the application. It will move to the patient entity. It would apply the filter to get the desired records. It will open the particular record to validate that whether it has the read access or not. And then it will also validate the business unit field. After that, the script will try to create the new record. So in order to generate our automation test script, we went on each of these objects, which is patient, care advocate, and related person. And we tried to read, create, update, and delete operations. So I'm going to pause it for now and will show you the report. So this is how the report looks like. I deliberated failed one step to show you that. This is how it is logging the result, that incorrect business unit value. Excel file value is PHP, while the application value is different from that. And similarly, it is exhibiting all the screenshots involved in that step, that the business unit field is empty over here. So that's how that is how our test case was failed. Because this test report contains the past and failed results as well. So we can like provide the filter over here and gauge that this test case was failed, and over here this test step was failed. So this is how the powerful reporting can help us in generating the actual results and communicating efficiently to all the stakeholders. All right, this is it from my side, and I will hand over to Nick for further processing.
Thank you very much, Sohaib. That was insightful, and I hope everybody else got something out of it. And what I'd like to do now is talk about next steps. If you found something that was relevant out of this, and we would be happy to have a session with you to discuss your needs for your organization. We can review your existing processes and analyze the QA tools that you're using. Then we can make a recommendation on whether you're using the best tools or if automation is the next best step. Then based on that, we can determine if your organization has the right skill set for these tools. And if not, we can set up some training for you. And hopefully by the end of that call, we can have a better understanding of your QA automation strategy. So that about wraps up this webinar. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us and spending some time with us. We will be sending a recording of the video out shortly. And if you do have questions in the meantime, please do not hesitate to ask. Otherwise, have a great day.